Hello and welcome to Flipped IGCSE Biology, Unit B5, Transportation, Lesson 4, the blood and blood vessels. Remember, the circulatory system is made of three main components: the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels. In this lesson, we're going to learn a bit more about the blood. The blood has four main components: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. You're also going to learn in more detail about the different types of blood vessels. We have arteries, veins, and capillaries. Let's start by looking at the components of the blood. We have two main types of blood cells. You've got white blood cells and red blood cells. There are many different types of white blood cells, but at IGCSE level, you'll need about two: phagocytes and lymphocytes. Now, red blood cells, as you know before from the B1, from the cells topic, are very well adapted to the job that they do. This is because they have no nucleus. This means there's more space for them to carry oxygen. They've got the biconcave disc shape that gives them a large surface area, and they have hemoglobin, which is a special compound that bonds with oxygen, and that's how red blood cells can carry oxygen. Phagocytes are also adapted for their purpose. They have a multi-lobed nucleus, and they ingest microbes. That means they sort of eat them. Lymphocytes have a very, very large nucleus, and they produce antibodies to defend against disease. And this is what the different types of blood cell look like. The red blood cells, you'll be familiar with them now. Lymphocytes are like this. You can see the large nucleus, and the phagocytes or neutrophils are like this. So, what do white blood cells do? They have three different jobs. First one, lymphocytes make antibodies. Now, remember, lymphocytes are the ones with a very large nucleus. All that blue area there is the nucleus. Now, any living thing around all of its cells will have proteins. These proteins help the organism identify if cells are its own or if the cells are foreign. So these proteins stick out from the cell membrane. Now, this is slightly exaggerated, but here I've put the triangle-shaped ones on the bacterium. These proteins are called antigens. Now, if the lymphocyte detects that there are foreign antigens in the body, or antigens that are not from that organism, it will produce antibodies. The antibodies have a similar shape and sort of fit in like jigsaw puzzles on the antigens. This will disable this bacteria, so it's no longer able to continue. Second job, phagocytes do phagocytosis. All this means is they ingest or eat microbes, kind of like Pac-Man. So you've got the bacteria there. This may be a bacteria that's been attacked by the antibodies already and has been disabled by the lymphocyte, or it might just be one that happens to be there. Remember, the phagocyte has the multi-lobe nucleus. The phagocyte, very simply, will pinch in a part of its cell membrane and surround the bacterium in a kind of pocket inside of it, and this pocket is called a vesicle. The phagocyte then releases digestive enzymes into this pocket to simply digest the bacteria. It will absorb the products of digestion and it's gone. The third function of white blood cells. They're involved in tissue rejection. Okay, you might have heard about this in organ transplants. So, all of your body cells will have a protein or many proteins sticking out from the cell membrane that identify them as your cells. Foreign cells from a different person or a different organism will have different proteins, and this will be identified by your immune system. Once again, the lymphocytes will produce antibodies to attack and disable the foreign cell. The antibodies bind to the antigens and the foreign cell dies. The next constituent part of the blood we're going to look at are platelets. Platelets are cell fragments, very small pieces of cells, and they're involved in blood clotting. So when a blood vessel is cut, they release a thread-like substance which is called fibrin. This makes like a net around the hole and actually causes the red blood cells to get stuck in this fibrin. All of the red blood cells stuck in this net seal up the hole so blood can no longer escape. The final component of blood is plasma. If you take blood and you put it in a very small test tube and you spin it around really, really fast in a machine called a centrifuge, you will end up with something that looks like the test tube on the right-hand side. You'll see that the red blood cells have sunk to the bottom because they're kind of the heaviest, and they form 45% of your total blood. On top of that, you've got the leukocytes, the white blood cells, and the platelets, and that's less than 1% of the blood. But the whole rest of it, the majority of the blood actually, is plasma. Very simply, plasma is just the liquid surrounding the blood cells. The plasma transports various dissolved substances like urea, hormones, carbon dioxide, and glucose. Now, let's have a look at the blood vessels. So, there are 3 types of blood vessels that you need to know about in detail: arteries, capillaries, and veins. Arteries take blood away from the heart. The blood leaves the heart at very high pressures. The arteries therefore got very thick walls. If you look at this diagram, the wall of the artery is much, much thicker, and the lumen, the hole in the middle, is much smaller than the vein. Capillaries have a wall only 1 cell thick, and they connect arteries to veins. Arteries and veins branch into small arterioles, which then branch again into capillaries. Now, veins carry blood to the heart. They have much thinner walls because the blood is under much lower pressure. Now, because the blood is under such low pressure, the veins have to have valves in, and these valves stop the blood going the wrong way. They prevent backflow. Now, let's look at capillaries in more detail. You know that when the capillaries take the blood, the oxygenated blood, to the tissues, the oxygen will move out by diffusion. Oxyhemoglobin is the name of the compound hemoglobin when it carries the oxygen. The oxyhemoglobin releases the oxygen and it moves into the body cells by diffusion, ready for use in respiration. Now, likewise, carbon dioxide will diffuse from the body cells into the plasma. When it gets to the lungs, it will be released. Capillaries are adapted to their function because they have a very small lumen. This means only 1 red blood cell can pass at a time. There are also many, 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 many capillaries. This is a very large network that supplies oxygen and takes away carbon dioxide to all of the cells in the whole of your body. They have a massive surface area. And that is it. Here is a bibliography.